अस्सलाम वालेकुम जी एंड अ वेरी वार्म वेलकम। आज के सेशन पे हमें आज ज्वाइन कर रही हैं नूर इंटरनेशनल यूनिवर्सिटी NIU's वेरी ओन डॉक्टर नजमा नजम, हमारी प्रो वाइस चांसलर फॉर NIU। डॉक्टर नजमा नजम, अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम।
क्या हाल है आपके? ठीक ठाक हैं? आई होप यू आर डूइंग wonderfully well on this lovely sunny afternoon as the weather changes from winter into
Thank
spring.
you very much for having me here today. Thank you.
Pleasure. So, Dr. Najam, I think in true spirit, जिस तरह हम अमूमन करते हैं, पहले मैं एडमिन टीम को रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा if we could have a brief promo video of Noor International University and some of the programs that we are currently running, and then we'll come back to you. आपका formal एक तारुफ करवाएंगे and we'll launch into our session. So, admin team, over to you.
Thank you.
Right, thank you very much जी and welcome back. हमारे गेस्ट को डॉक्टर नजमा नजम as well as our audience जो हमें ज्वाइन कर रही हैं आज. So डॉक्टर नजमा नजम का फॉर्मल तारुफ करवाते हैं जी. प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर नजमा नजम joined Noor International University NIU Lahore as Pro Vice Chancellor from 19th November 2021. Dr. Najma, a Fulbright alumni, has over 49 years of experience, mashallah, in teaching, administration, and research experience in the public and private sectors universities of Pakistan. Dr. Najm has experience of working and conducting research in several universities in the United States. A psychologist by training from the US in the fields of behavioral neurosciences, she introduced behavioral neuroscience, neuropsychology, and psychopharmacology in teaching in senior levels for psychology students. She also has strong research record and has supervised many masters, MPhil, and PhD researchers. She was the founding vice chancellor of the first women's university, i.e. Fatma Jinnah Women's University in Rawalpindi, and after that served as the vice chancellor of Karakoram International Universities in Gilgit-Baltistan. Professor Najma Najam, welcome again to our show.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
तो डॉक्टर निजमा बताइए कि एनीथिंग with this phenomenal background, कुछ help us fill in the gaps, थोड़ी सी अपनी professional journey के बारे में बताइए, about your love for psychology, about obviously your love for teaching. Then let's start over there.
Well, thank you very much for this question. And I was thinking today, my love for teaching was not there. I think this is the last thing I wanted to do. I wanted to be a banker. I wanted to be a lawyer. My parents said, no, I don't want to be a doctor. No, I don't want to be a teacher. But eventually, as things come to pass, I found this niche. I was offered this position in psychology department going in 1970 on a year's leave. And somebody told me, why don't you, at that point in time, the vice chancellor, the chairpersons of the department had the powers to hire best students or graduates on ad hoc basis. So I was hired on an ad hoc basis on a temporary leave vacancy. And then I found my niche. It was so remarkable. It was pure coincidence, but I found that I love teaching. And that love of teaching has continued throughout my career. How did I come to psychology? Psychology I didn't know about. At that point in time, excuse me, we had psychology as part of philosophy being taught in colleges. So one paper of psychology got me hooked on to psychology. And I remember it's a scholarship in philosophy, and I told my father, no, I want to do psychology. And I do psychology department. He told me, "आप फिर सोच ले." मैंने कहा जी नहीं सर मुझे अब मुझे करना ही psychology. There I was determined. But I think I chose the right path. And after doing I got my master's from here and started teaching here. And then when the scholarship opportunity came, I applied for the Fulbright fellowship, scholarship. And I got selected. We were 4 candidates from all over Pakistan. And I and another lady from Hyderabad got to go to Bowling Green State University. Who knows where Bowling Green is? I mean, we didn't know about it. But when I got there, I got to learn from the best mentor that I had. If he had been alive, he would probably qualify for a Nobel Prize. But he was a hard taskmaster. I learned under the hardest conditions. So there, as you know, in the US, there are no simple paths for, and especially for science graduates. I went with a knowledge of high school physiology to do neurosciences. I mean, that was audacious of me to think that I could do neurosciences, but I did. And I kept telling myself, I'll keep saying yes till I understand what are the neurochemicals, what is the neurochemistry, what is neurophysiology, which I did after 5 years. And my best, I think, reward was my advisor stood up in front of the committee and shook my hand. And he said, this is one of the best presentations I had. So, but after that, it didn't stop. I came back home and I joined Punjab University again and introduced some of the subjects that I had learned. And I was enthused with the brain. I mean, brain has become one of the major aspects of my life. So professionally, then I went back again to University of Georgia, which is missing here. University of Georgia, I did postdoctoral research. And again, the neuroanatomical locations of visual system. But interestingly, I got somehow accidentally into microsurgery because we were working on Anolis anolis. You know that lizard which rang badalti. And I said, I'm so scared of lizards. But when I got into the lab and I did those neurosurgeries on the anolis under the microscope, extraordinary experience. I came back, then I went back for my senior fellowship because neuropsychology was emerging as a new area. And with my background in neurosciences, I thought it would be a best fit. I could come back and do neuropsychological testing, training, assessment, and rehabilitation at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. Best training that I got from there. So as I went along, I rolled along, and I brought my learning back into the field. So I'm excited about it even today, and Noor International University is a part of that. But I introduced courses, I introduced research laboratories, I created my own little experiments, and of course, field experiments for the students to understand neurosciences and behavior. But all in all, it was a very satisfying journey. Challenges many, but satisfying certainly.
MashaAllah. Thank you for that lovely background to the person जो हमारे सामने आज बैठी हैं मुखातिब हैं हमसे. And डॉक्टर नजमा, मैं इसी आपकी एक बात से अगर उसी को कंटिन्यू करूं, आपने यूएस में पीएचडी की and आपने कहा कि it was a different experience altogether. Which let's dilate upon that a little bit कि आज भी जो अमेरिका की higher education है, both from the academic perspective, from the faculty perspective and from the research perspective, वो हमेशा आज भी consider किए जाती है, बड़ी cutting edge है.
बिल्कुल।
तो यहाँ के बारे में बात करते हैं, कुछ पैरेलल्स ड्रॉ करते हैं कि आपके ओपिनियन में उस तरह की एजुकेशन लेवल को अचीव करने में व्हाट आर सम ऑफ द लेट्स से करंट ट्रेंड्स इन पाकिस्तान दैट वी मे बी फॉलोइंग ऑन द करेक्ट पाथ, एंड व्हाट आर द चैलेंजेस दैट यू फील के कुछ चीजें एड्रेस करने वाली हैं, एंड इफ यू हैव एनी इनसाइट्स इनटू हाउ टू एड्रेस देम। एंड द रीजन मैं आपसे स्पेसिफिकली ये सवाल पूछता हूँ क्योंकि हमने वो स्टूडेंट्स का माइंडसेट डेवलप करना है, वो एक साइनेप्सिस क्रिएट करने हैं, यू हैव टू नॉट टू मिस यूज द वर्ड्स बट एक ब्रेन वॉशिंग, उनको क्लेंजिंग करनी है और फिर उनमें डेटा रीलोड करना है।
हाँ,
तो उसके बारे में उस नौयत से अगर आप थोड़ा सा गाइडेंस दे सकें हमें कि हायर एजुकेशन इन पाकिस्तान।
I absolutely, I think when I was given a chance to start at Fatima Jinnah University, I noted down all the things that I learned from the American system. And I said and asked the steering committee that we are not going to do it the way the usual university. कि जी कुछ subject fixed है, ये भी पढ़ाने, ये भी पढ़ाने. No, I said this is. So I went with my notebook and I visited various universities in the US, University of Washington State and University of Washington, फिर पेंसिल्वेनिया में आपके चैथम कॉलेज था फॉर वुमेन, एंड वसार था, ब्रेन मॉर था, ये बहुत सारी जो स्मॉलर यूनिवर्सिटीज एंड लार्जर यूनिवर्सिटीज. आई वेंट अराउंड एंड नोटेड कि उनके स्ट्रक्चर्स और उनकी जो फॉर्मुलेशन है ऑफ कोर्सेज वो किस तरह बनती है. एंड व्हेन आई केम बैक, दैट इज एग्जैक्टली व्हाट माय क्या कहना चाहिए ब्लूप्रिंट वाज, एंड आई डिड दैट. बट somehow I was able to manage some of the things inside, but outside the structures are given. As one chancellor said, Dr. Najma, you're doing a very good job, but you work outside the system. मैंने कहा sir, then the system needs to change because then we do not grow. जो चीजें मुझे नजर आई हैं जो अमेरिकन सिस्टम में, अब there are several layers. One is the autonomy of the faculty, the university, to run its own courses or follow its own research. And then जैसे हमने किया, हमारी फंडिंग आती थी रिसर्च की from pharmaceuticals because they were interested in the effect of drugs on the brain. तो pharmaceuticals, मुझे याद है पेपर जो हमारा प्रिंट होते थे, पब्लिश होते थे, उसके नीचे लिखा होता था कि फंडेड बाय सच एंड सच ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. लेकिन हमारे यहाँ वो ऑटोनॉमी नहीं है, और अब तो और ज्यादा फिक्स हो गई है कि हर एक ने एक ही तरह के कोर्सेज पढ़ाने हैं और एक ही फॉर्मेट में पढ़ाने हैं. तो दैट इज कंस्ट्रेनिंग द थिंकिंग एंड द वर्किंग ऑफ द फैकल्टी एज वेल एज द स्टूडेंट्स. नंबर 2, स्टूडेंट्स को जब आप लाते हैं यूनिवर्सिटी में तो आपके वो स्टूडेंट्स के ऑलरेडी ब्रेन फिक्स हुए होते हैं, रटे लगाने हैं, नंबर लेने हैं, आगे जाना है. आप क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग सिखाते ही नहीं. मुझे याद है गिलगित में one of the science students who was a PhD doing PhD in bio, he said, मैडम हम तो साइंस के स्टूडेंट्स हैं, हमें क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग क्यों पढ़ा रहे हैं? मैंने कहा precisely, you need critical thinking because that is what. So I see a contrast here, and I see that the students there are taught to question, are taught to understand, and are taught to articulate themselves. तो वो हमारे यहाँ अभी भी it is not, in fact अब ज्यादा कंस्ट्रक्ट हो गया. शायद एक जमाने में थोड़ी ओपननेस आई थी, लेकिन अब बहुत कंस्ट्रक्ट हो गया. एंड रिसर्च तो हमारे यहाँ होती नहीं. अगर आपको याद होगा पिछले साल का जो नोबेल लॉरिएट है, he was 95 years old, केमिस्ट्री का नोबेल लॉरिएट. And he said, if I had retired at 60, I would have lost 35 years of research. So they never retired. They are welcome in the universities and they are teaching and doing research. So a huge human resource of research is gone. तो ये अब कुछ चीजें हैं जो मैं समझती हूँ कि नहीं. दूसरे यूनिवर्सिटीज फाइनेंशियली ऑटोनॉमी नहीं है, एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव ऑटोनॉमी तो बिल्कुल नहीं है, खासकर पब्लिक सेक्टर में. So constrictions at all levels. and then we expect कि हम दुनिया की बेस्ट यूनिवर्सिटीज के साथ compete कर सकें, हमारे ना students compete कर सकेंगे, and when they go to the West, you will be amazed, and of course you know कि वहाँ जाके you do so well because एक opening मिलती है, एक space मिलती है, और knowledge की expansion होती है, and that we do very well because then we have been given the opportunity to go.
Right. Fair enough, Professor Saiba. And isi again along the lines of what you have just talked about, आपने autonomy की बात की, both in fact from multiple points of view. आपने course के design की, course के running की, then the administration side, the financial side. उसी को अगर आगे लेके चलें, notwithstanding the student side right now, because obviously हमारी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी बनती है कि स्टूडेंट्स के जहन को खोलना है, वो एनालिटिकल स्किल्स जो आप कह रही हैं उनको इम्पार्ट करना है, बट द फर्स्ट रोल perhaps is that of the not the system that they have come from, let's say the secondary school system, but अगर यूनिवर्सिटी की साइड से देखें, अगर हम थोड़ा सा पाकिस्तान के लैंडस्केप के मुताबिक पब्लिक सेक्टर और प्राइवेट सेक्टर को थोड़ा सा कॉन्ट्रास्ट करें, which you briefly touched upon, what is the role you think of the public sector universities? What can they do in terms of upgrading or changing in the landscape ताकि वो बेहतर quality of education impart कर सकें? Is it the system? Is it those who are running the system? Number one. And number two, अगर तो private universities आपका ख्याल है कि अपना एक उन्होंने जगह बनानी है, उन्होंने अपना रोल अदा करना है, तो वो क्या चीजें private sector कर सकती है, which perhaps from where the public sector leaves off, perhaps due to various reasons, how can the private sector kind of continue where divide is?
ये इसमें just to give an overview, the public sector has a space. I mean, large grounds hai, buildings hai, infrastructure hai, support hai, which is given to them. The private sector has to manage the funds to run a university, the buildings from its own investments to run the university. So private sector की approach is तरह से different है, niche, and also look for possibilities where revenue could be generated. And I think that is a bind that comes with the private sector label. Public sector could have done much more. Public sector को एक go ahead मिला होता है, और if you look at the number of PhDs in the public sector and the research facilities in the public sector, they are huge in comparison to the private sector.
Right.
Private sector अपने तौर पे कई universities हैं who are going into like hundreds of PhDs, but still the public sector has that advantage. Number one. Number two, public sector को credibility मिल जाती है from being a public sector university, और private sector अपनी credibility build करनी पड़ती है students के लिए भी और nationally otherwise. Public sector could have done much more. आपका public sector cannot, और ये अगर visionary leadership हो, तो there are, as I always say, Pakistan is a living laboratory. आपके पास there are so many ideas on which research could be done, और national, international issues हैं, चाहे social sciences की बात कर लो, चाहे STEM की बात कर लो. I mean, the public sector university has the readiness, but उसको हम पहुंचते नहीं हैं. We do not reach the maximum goals that we set for ourselves. और numbers of students public sector में तो बहुत आते हैं. I mean, huge number of students who are because of the fee structure and because of the facilities, hostels being huge buildings for hostels, huge buildings for playgrounds, huge playgrounds and huge laboratories, etc. तो आप देखें तो सही एडवांटेज कितना है उनके पास, लेकिन दैट इज नॉट बीइंग पुट टू गुड यूज. आफ्टर 4 o'clock ऑल यूनिवर्सिटीज क्लोज डाउन. मुझे तो सबसे बड़ा मेरा ये वो है कि ये दिस इज, आपने इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर दिया, ह्यूज पर्सनल का एक बनाया है, बट आफ्टर 4 o'clock देयर आर एम्प्टी कैंपसेस. वेस्ट में आपने देखा रात को भी लैब्स चल रही होती है, रात को भी क्लासेस चल रही होती है. इट्स अराउंड द क्लॉक थिंग ऑलमोस्ट.
Very, very true. And Professor Saba, based on this, जो आपने बिल्कुल I think सही, you've hit the nail on its head in terms of saying कि जी हमने ये again I hope I don't kind of ruffle any feathers, but जो सफेद हाथी खड़े कर दिए in terms of these huge land allocations and buildings, operational expense के बारे में obviously it's taxpayer money which is subsidizing the cost with the meager cost of the public sector education. And again, I think even places like the US, वहाँ भी state funded universities होती हैं, and वहाँ पे fees is distinctly lower, perhaps not as low as as ours are. लेकिन again, purchasing power parity को शायद सामने रखते हुए, I don't think I'm qualified to do that. Nonetheless, how do you foresee in this current landscape काफी mushrooming हुई है of the private sector universities especially in the recent decade, I think, because लोगों को general population, general public को माशाल्लाह, we're 210 million people. We need the education and we need the uplifting and to get to higher education standards and improve them. What can the private sector do, and how can they play their part in becoming part of the solution to help us along in higher education?
Bilkul. I think first of all, let me qualify the fact that there was a gap and there was a niche, which is why private sector universities, public sector could not deliver as much जो need थी. और with the growing cohort of young people, उन्होंने कहीं ना जाना था. और फिर आप प्राइवेट सेक्टर को देखते हो कि एक ओपननेस है और एक I think they're looking at possible areas and where they can attract students. क्यों जाते हैं private sector MBAs करने और दूसरे programs, even sciences now. पहले sciences नहीं थी इसमें, private sector did not venture into the sciences, but now they have engineering, money making ventures में जाते थे, engineering, business, computer sciences, वगैरह, IT. But now they've also gone into social sciences. They've also gone into sustainable development, environment and climate change kind of things. They've also gone into a hybrid form of education. So इतने flexible हैं वो. That flexibility in itself is an advantage. So they can look at the market, they can project the needs of the future, not today, not tomorrow, but the future. And what they can do is adjust their courses and develop the courses and programs accordingly, which public sector में नहीं होता. वहाँ 2 साल लग जाते हैं कोर्स को डेवलप होने के बाद इम्प्लीमेंट होने के लिए. By that time it is outdated. The way things are moving, it is outdated. तो पब्लिक सेक्टर की जो स्ट्रक्चरल आपने बताया, yes, it's a bottom heavy structure. बहुत ज्यादा हम नीचे की, I always call it like the pyramid. नीचे से इतना heavy है where you're paying all this thousands of employees to just support the, and then fewer and fewer, very few teachers. अब किसी का एग्जांपल नहीं मैं देती, लेकिन just thousands में employees हैं, hundreds में teachers हैं, और ऊपर एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, जो टॉप एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन 3-4 लोग हैं. How can we run a university? The university then runs into deficit. हमारे पब्लिक सेक्टर के अंदर ये प्रॉब्लम है, प्राइवेट सेक्टर में ये प्रॉब्लम नहीं. प्राइवेट सेक्टर इज अ वेरी savvy businessman who looks at what is needed, और skeletal उसने अपनी रखी हुई है एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन है, sharp, quick and easy decision making वहाँ रखी हुई, and which helps the courses, the administration, the running of the university. तो इसलिए more efficient system, I would say.
Right. which Professor Najma brings up the elephant in the room. आपने बिल्कुल सही point out किया कि private sector के पास obviously, because it is being run typically as a business, and they need to fill that bulge, and that bulge definitely I think undergraduate bachelor's degrees से बहुत ज़्यादा आता है. That's the meat. Then you have your graduate programs, your MScs, MAs, MPhils वगैरह. And then right at the other end of the spectrum is PhDs. तो उसके ऊपर अगर आपने थोड़ा सा शुरू में भी point out किया था कि can we really expect two things, I guess, come up. Can we really expect कि जी private sector इस PhD level education को आया के promote करना चाहेगा? Is there enough of an incentive for them to do so? Number one. And then the second question, which immediately begs itself back to back, is कि जी आपने बिल्कुल सही कहा कि पाकिस्तान एक it's such a huge experimental ground. We are diverse, we are a very large population. A concept of applied research, so not research and production of PhDs for the sake of producing PhDs, बट वाकई वो PhDs फिर इस तरह का रिसर्च करें और उनको एक डायरेक्शन में माइल किया जाए which will produce research which is meaningful and useful for application in our lands.
Right.
Thoughts?
हमारी, I think, right. Thank you very much. This is one of my pet peeves that PhDs. अगर आप देखें तुम्हारी universities way back when 60s or 70s maybe, they were very much into applied research. अगर एग्रीकल्चर यूनिवर्सिटी फैसलाबाद को देखें, जो आजकल हम किनू खाते हैं, और मैक्सी पाक वीक का आपने सुना हुआ है, एंड बासमती राइस, एंड ऑल दीज थिंग्स वर एट दैट पॉइंट इन टाइम ब्रॉट इनटू द मार्केट बाय रिसर्चर्स हु वर इन अ यूनिवर्सिटी. अच्छा, अब और इसी तरह से आप डॉक्टर सलीमुज़्ज़मान सिद्दीकी का नाम सुनते हैं, कराची में वेरी इंटरनेशनली रिनोन्ड केमिस्ट, और उन्होंने ऐसे ऐसे कैनाबोनॉइड्स को एनालाइज किया जिसको बाद में ड्रग कंपनीज ने यूज किया. अभी उनका नाम इतना नहीं हम सुनते, लेकिन व्हाट आई एम सेइंग इज दैट द यूनिवर्सिटीज इन द 50s and the 60s and the 70s were producing research which could be applied to the national problems. Gradually, I think somewhere we lost our way. अब हमारी रिसर्च क्या हो रही है? अब पॉलिसी मेकर्स के लिए हम रिसर्च कर रहे हैं. हम स्टूडेंट्स आते हैं who do the, मैं अब किसी को कहती नहीं, लेकिन वो छोटे मोटे एग्रीकल्चरल का वो प्लॉट्स ले लेते हैं, उस पर थोड़ा सा सॉइल सैंपल ले लिया, थोड़ा सा केमिकल्स डाल, उसका एनालिसिस हो गया जी. लेकिन has anybody told or the policy makers told them कि ये हमारा नेशनल प्रॉब्लम है, इस पे रिसर्च पीएचडी करो और हमें इस पे बताओ पीएचडी के बाद, रिसर्च के बाद व्हाट टू डू नेक्स्ट. वो पीएचडी स्टूडेंट्स के पीएचडी वॉल्यूम्स पढ़े हुए लाइब्रेरीज में रॉटिंग हुए, एंड रिसर्च पेपर्स हम पब्लिश कर लेते हैं, बट दे आर नॉट अप्लाइड. Even for applied psychology, they are not applied. Policy makers are also not interested. They said कि जी हम किसी से बाहर से फंडिंग लेके किसी को हम एक्सपर्ट को बुला लेंगे, उससे ले लेंगे. So universities are being wasted in that way. हाँ, अगर हम करें in the real manner and the real issues हैं, social cultural context के issues हैं, diversity के issues हैं, inclusion के issues हैं, of social sciences. इसी तरह मैंने जैसे पहले कहा environment के issues हैं, sustainable development के issues हैं. इसी तरह आपकी STEM के research है. We cannot just have STEM research without social and human sciences introduced into them, because science needs humans as well, क्योंकि impact eventually होता है. Also, we need to restructure the way grants are given. Private sector universities could deliver, and they could go into PhDs, and they probably will do a much better job. But I would suggest, मेरी जो vision है वो ये है कि there should be collaborations between universities, चाहे public sector, private sector हो, चाहे पॉलिसी, गवर्नमेंट के अपने बहुत अच्छे इदारे हैं, वो रिसर्च कर रहे होते हैं, नार्क है, पार्क है, PCSIR है, बहुत सारे इस तरह के इदारे हैं, तो वो मिलकर यूनिवर्सिटीज के साथ रिसर्च करें और वो प्राइवेट सेक्टर और पब्लिक सेक्टर दोनों को साथ लेके चले। जो फैसिलिटीज हमारे पास अभी नहीं है, those organizations can provide the facilities. We have the know-how, you have the laboratories. Let's do a win-win situation. उनकी भी बेनिफिट होगा, हमारा भी। अब लेबोरेटरीज क्लोज पड़ी हैं, इक्विपमेंट खराब हो रहा है, लेकिन रिसर्च नहीं हो रही वहां पे। So we need to do that, and private sector can jump in and take on these roles, and then PhDs, producing PhDs will also be beneficial for them because the research profile बढ़ता है universities का with the PhDs.
Very true, very true. Thank you, Professor Saba. And I think इसमें next step probably आपने जिस तरह से कहा है कि multiple ways में private sector universities can of course step in, and the private sector, let's say businesses, I think can also step in because आपकी बात बिल्कुल सही है कि जी in the past that research that has been conducted locally has actually benefited us in terms of commercialization. जो हमारे ORIC बन चुके हैं, it's supposed to be research and commercial industrialization and commercialization. So वो वाला angle जो missing है, I feel that the private sector and the industry academia collaboration, अगर वो trust deficit जो है ना जी, उसको हमने we have to break down these walls of trust deficit because our आपने सही point out किया कि I think because we do research for the sake of doing research and for the sake of, let's say, putting out a paper or completing a PhD thesis, the private sector or anybody who could be potential stakeholders in such research or could benefit from perhaps seem to feel that there's not enough value or originality in the research or commercialization opportunities. तो उसको भी definitely I think बरकरार रखने के लिए best होगा कि हम private sector को वहाँ भी step up करवाएं, and of course private sector doesn't have the restrictions or the straitjackets perhaps जो कि public sector पे अक्सर डाल दी जाती हैं in terms of trying to allocate budgets or even project let's say funding, कोई seeding चाहिए होती है उनको. So there's a lot of opportunities I think, and I hope कि here at Noor International University our industry academia collaboration can go a longer way than most universities. Alhamdulillah, we have a wide landscape.
Inshallah.
And of course last question हम जरूर touch upon करेंगे about your vision for NIU. Until then, however, Dr. Najma, के ये बताइए कि how do you at, let's say, the earlier stages of higher education, the undergrad and grad school degrees, bachelor's, master's level पे, what seems to come to mind? How can we get our students to be more research oriented and to have that analytical thinking that seems to be missing from a secondary schooling system? And of course we'd like to hear from you not only as an academician but also as a well-trained behavioral psychologist. What's the missing link? How can we kind of fast track this switch on of analytical thinking?
Yeah, it's not just fast tracking it. It's just as you already said earlier, brainwashing them, training their minds to think differently. And आप अगर आपने कल्चरली देखें ना, हमारे बचपन से बच्चे को यू कैन नॉट आस्क क्वेश्चंस, एंड आजकल भी ये होता है कि बच्चे ने अगर डिसाइड करना है कि मेडिसिन में जाना है तो वो पेरेंट्स कहेंगे नहीं तुमको हमने, या बाप की बिजनेस है वो कहेगा तुमने बिजनेस में जाना है, मेडिसिन में तुम क्यों जाओगे, या अगर बाप डॉक्टर है तो वो बच्चे को कहेगा तुम्हें भी डॉक्टर बनना है, वो कहेगा नहीं मैंने बिजनेस करनी, मैंने कंप्यूटर करना. तो देयर आर अ ह्यूज, हमारी जो सोशल कल्चरल कंस्ट्रेंट्स हैं वो बच्चे को डिसीजन मेकिंग की इजाजत नहीं है. और उसके बाद फिर हम अपने यूनिवर्सिटीज को देखते हैं, वहां पर भी यही है, सिस्टम बना हुआ है और उसी में स्टूडेंट जाके जस्ट स्लाइड्स इनटू द सिस्टम. बट आई एग्री विथ यू एंड आई tried this experiment with Fatima Jinnah University at the undergraduate level, and what I found was, and I will also quote a example from Gilgit. Fatima Jinnah University में जो undergraduate FSC करके FFSC करके आते थे और जो MA के बाद BA के बाद students आते, we could see a stark difference because BA के बाद उनके दिमाग और फिक्स हो गए थे. So what we got in the after 12-year education, we could change their mindsets, and we expose them to courses like I taught once. I decided that I'm going to teach a course on popular culture. तो उनको कहा कि जी सारी फिल्में from undergraduate software engineering students. मैडम हम तो देखते ही नहीं हैं ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट फिल्में. मैं कहा नहीं, आपको देखनी होगी. आप एनालाइज करें कि आपका पॉपुलर कल्चर कैसे चेंज हुआ है over the last 50, 60, 70 years. And then it became such a popular course. Okay, because then next semester, I think a large number signed up. I said, I can't teach you all. So, what I said was, each course that we taught at Fatima Jinnah University, like I think at LUMS and other private universities, undergraduate level, we started opening their minds to possibilities, letting them ask questions, letting them think on their own. And by the time they graduate in 4 years, they are very conversant. और मुझे अच्छी बात ये लगती थी कि the organizations, international even donors in Islamabad and Rawalpindi looked for graduates from Fatima Jinnah University. And as I told somebody from Higher Education Commission, it is not what we get at the admission. Some were very close to third division. Third division nahi aayi, 2 number se reh gayi. We took them in. But when they graduated, because we gave them this mind-opening, critical thinking, all these courses where they could explore themselves and let them question. That was freedom. इसी तरह गिलगित में मैंने कभी जब नई गई तो मैंने किसी से कहा स्टूडेंट से कि आपके पास कोर्स आउटलाइन है? कहता नहीं. मैंने कहा अच्छा आप टीचर से मांगिएगा. वो टीचर के पास गया. टीचर ने कहा शुक्र करो मैं पढ़ाने आ जाता हूँ, तुम मुझसे कोर्स आउटलाइन मांग रहे हो. तो ये फ्रेम जो था ना, teachers then and the students could ask questions which were not previously done. तो हमको ये सिखाना है. और undergraduate में ये this is the best time to catch them because they've just have 12 years. We can start reformulating and re-energizing their brains. It can be done. It has been done.
बिल्कुल. I think you're right that it's not impossible. It's a mindset जिसको हमने obviously higher education stage पे शुरू करना है, and then I think there is lots of feedback and stakeholder input going back towards our primary schooling and secondary schooling system. और आपने बिल्कुल सही शुरू में जो पॉइंट आउट आपने बात की थी कि जी हमारा कल्चर परहैप्स एक वो डेफरेंस वाला है, बड़ों को की बात सुननी है, नॉट टू क्वेश्चन, नॉट टू, हालांकि इट डजंट नीड टू नेसेसरली बी रूड क्वेश्चनिंग, इट्स जस्ट इंक्विजिटिव क्वेश्चनिंग. अगर हम वो माइंडसेट बनाएं तो वाकई आई थिंक हमारी एक सोसाइटी में एक वो इनकलकेशन आ सकती है ऑफ नॉट एक्सेप्टिंग स्टेटस को. आई थिंक द एक्सेप्टेंस ऑफ स्टेटस को इज अ वेरी बिग थिंग in our particular culture and society. Right. So let's move on, Professor Saiba, a little bit about your particular role, I think, in the past at various public sector universities, both in terms of teaching and administration. Any learnings and any particular challenges that you've been able to address and resolve in your career? That you'd like to highlight?
Thank you very much. And I think this is something that the first thing that I would do, and I being trained as a scientist, I would take down my notebook and then draw an inductive tree of how things should be going and what I could do to get that to that point in time. So Fatima Jinnah University since it was the first women's university, and I thought we needed computers. 98 में computers were not in the public sector, maybe in the private sector universities. बिल्कुल नहीं थे. और सिखाना उनको and teaching them research and teaching them in even Islamic studies was taught in English. मैंने कहा ये अंग्रेजी में होगा. International language सीखनी जरूरी. इसके साथ women in development, because these are women who are going to be going into the future careers. तो ये कोर्सेज बनाए, लेकिन मेरा चैलेंज सबसे बड़ा ये था कि कोई खुद कोर्सेज बनाने को तैयार नहीं था। वो कहते थे जी वो बना बनाया है। मैं कहा नो नो नो, here you have to develop your own courses and you have to defend your courses what you're going to teach to the students. दूसरी चीज जो मेरे लिए चैलेंजिंग था, बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज, और अब तो आपको यूनिवर्सिटीज में एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में खवातीन नजर आती हैं, लेकिन उस वक्त women were hugely missing. There were some women professors, but नीचे के लेवल पे और एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में women were missing. So women in higher education management were non-existent. ये इतना बड़ा चैलेंज था, teaching women administration and teaching women to be administrators and teaching women to be higher education administrators. ये I think one of the biggest challenges I had at Fatima Jinnah was this. But after having done that, I set up a Center for Higher Education Leadership and Management at Fatima Jinnah University, and in collaboration with Association of Commonwealth University. उनका एक gender का equity का program, so they worked with us. So for me, what I see is looking at the gaps and filling those gaps and looking at international linkages. इसी तरह गिलगित में when I went, huge possibility. This is the highest mountain ranges in the world. So who would not be interested? Italian, German, Swiss, American, Canadians. This is the place to come. So there would be grants coming in, and there would be research coming in, funding coming in, and of course then the students got to learn mountain area development. Their languages, what are the difficulties, the economic difficulties, the social difficulties, so on, and environmental challenges, and so on and so forth. So ये जब niches नजर आते थे ना मुझे, so these were my challenges, that this we need to address, and this we need to research on, this we need to train on, and so on and so forth. And that is, I think, one of the best things that I feel that I have contributed.
ठीक है जी. I'm so sorry. I think I may have had a quick disruption. I hope you could. Yes, I think I'm still there. I just realized बिजली चली गई है. So we're almost at the end of the session, Professor Najma. And how could we complete the session before asking two key questions? Number one, आपकी vision for NIU in the near future. And number two, मैं दोनों questions इकट्ठे कर देता हूँ because we have about 3 minutes remaining. Number two, KG, any words of wisdom for not only Noor International University students, but for other students who are either currently in the higher education system or are considering entering the higher education system? Over to you.
Thank you. My vision for Noor International is, I see possibilities. The best thing I see here is the energy, and it's one of the fastest growing higher education, very new, very dynamic, and very they're motivated to bring in changes. Right now, we do have a medical orientation because it is a sort of stemming out of a medical system, but I foresee that we are going to have expansions in the areas that are needed, and of course there are niches there. Or isme, I'm not just talking about sciences, I'm talking about social sciences, and I'm also thinking that we have already been into this experiment of hybrid learning, so isko hum expand karenge, research karenge, because research publications bhi hongi और international collaborations होगी. तो मेरी what I do is I look for possibilities, and when I see possibilities, or I create possibilities, and when I create those possibilities, I follow them, and बहुत अच्छा होता है. And मुझे जो मिला है ना, वो ये है कि canvas is wide open. इसके अंदर पेंट करना हम सब ने मिलके, and मुझे जो अपनी faculty, अपना staff, अपना support नजर आता है, highly energetic, and faculty is eager to learn, eager to develop, and eager to go forward. And students को भी मैं देखती हूँ ना campus में फिरते हुए, तो मुझे इतना मजा आता है because these are, इस वक्त they're bubbling with energy and they want to do things. So certainly that is the second thing that you're saying is How do we do it? I think partnerships, collaborations, future aspirations इनको साथ लेके चलना.
Inshallah. Well said, madam. Thank you very much. In fact, I'm sorry we missed an audience question. उन्होंने भी यही पूछा था कि जी student exchange programs के क्या options हो सकती हैं international universities के साथ? How can we make it possible? Alhamdulillah, I think we're proud to say that already there are a few international universities इनके साथ हमारी गुफ्तगू चल रही है. There is interest because luckily we operate in a offering degrees जो कि बहुत professionally oriented है, जिनका automatic segue हो सकता है the international exchange programs as well. So inshallah in the near future, I think under your leadership we look forward to developing not only our width of programs but also the depth of programs. And inshallah जिस तरह हमने बात की कि अनकरीब कोई PhD program would be definitely in the works. Mashallah, with the benefit of the huge system behind us. Yes, zyada health oriented, but inshallah, nothing stopping us. You can only go as far as you can dream. Wali baat hai. So inshallah, we're dreaming big.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Najma. Thank you, and thank you for your time today, and thank you to our audience जिन्होंने हमें join किया, अपना time निकाला, हमें सुना. I hope it was of use to you. Next few sessions हम कोशिश करेंगे to have a flavor of academics and academia, inshallah, as we move forward in these series of sessions. And of course, we look forward to welcoming ना सिर्फ हमारे potential students on campus, but also parents to come and see what NIU is all about. Dr. Najma, with that, I'd like to thank you again, आपके time के लिए in particular.
Thank you.
And
thank
inshallah, we'll be seeing you soon.